to Ed Flash Ferris with America's Workforce.
And remember, you can check us out on at least 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Pandora. And when you get an opportunity, here's what you do. Just sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and give us a rating. We always appreciate those 5-star ratings, so please keep them coming. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the Ohio Federation of Teachers, oh.aft.org is a website. Let's go back to our live line. Rejoin John Schlois, president of the News Guild CWA, fighting for justice on the job for journalists and other workers. You can find more at newsguild.org. Okay, we talked about the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Now, this is a really interesting story here. This is the staff involving SEIU, that's a service employees, 32BJ in New York City. Big union, big union. Union is very powerful, but apparently the people that work at the union, the staffers, are saying, you know what? Things aren't very good here, so we need a union. So they contacted John. John, you got to tell me this story. First of all, it's cool that they called you on it, but maybe you could run down some of the conditions that they're upset about. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, in addition to representing journalists and media workers, we also represent a ton of labor union staff. So we actually represent the staff that works at the AFL-CIO and the United Food and Commercial Workers, the American Postal Workers Union. We represent the comm staff actually at the United Auto Workers Union. And that's got like a long history of labor union staffers unionizing with us. We probably have about 40 or so different groups. And we represent a lot of staff that works at different locals of the large international union of SEIU. So we've represented about a dozen different kind of groups from Local 1 in Chicago and kind of scattered across the country, places like Denver and elsewhere. Just 2 months ago, we actually had a union election for another big part, another big local at SEIU. This is the in-house staff at 1199 in SEIU in the Northeast. And so those workers voted overwhelmingly to unionize. And I think from that, the staff at another local in SEIU, 32BJ, also were like, maybe we should have a union too. And so, it's when you're a staffer at a union, several unions have their own union staff or their own union that represents the staff. But it becomes tricky, right? If you don't have union protections and you work at a union, because you're advocating to workers who don't know what a union is that they should form one and join your union. But at the same time, then you aren't able to be represented or are not protected by a collective bargaining agreement. So, the folks at 32BJ, believe in the mission statement of SEIU, which is unions for all. And they're like, well, but that should include us. So they're asking for, dignity and a voice on the job. They want job security. Right now, they're all at-will employees. And they'd like, a better way to actually have a say in their wages, in their retirement plans, in their healthcare costs. They want to have a say in all of that. And the way to do it is to form a union. So they went public just this week.
Where do we stand right now? Are you in the process of organizing? And how many staff union members are we looking at right now, John?
Well, the union itself represents 180,000 members in 32BJ. Obviously, we're talking in the hundreds of folks that would be working at 32BJ, and we're in the process of unionizing. The first step is to request for voluntary recognition. So, any boss can respond and say, you know what, we will voluntarily recognize the fact that you want to be a union, and we'll start negotiating with you right away. That's always the better way to go about it. Or they can push you to an election at the National Labor Relations Board. So right now, since they just went public, we've called for the leadership of 32BJ to voluntarily recognize them, but we haven't heard yet.
Okay. Those of you listening can go to the website again, newsguild.org, and there are a lot of people at 32BJ very, very upset and are speaking out. One of them is Nancy Engel, where she said unions preach workplace democracy. Well, they should practice workplace democracy. Okay, I get it. Let's move to